Welcome to In the Demo.
I'm Adam Pierno, Generation X.
And I'm Farrah Bostic, a Carter baby, apparently. I just found that out.
Is that like instant Google result that is popping up as we're talking?
It is. It's right up at the top. You've got a short list of other names for the micro generation born between 75 and 80. I think it's funny that people are still trying to make that a thing, that it's a micro generation. But I'm good with it. I'm gonna stay in the micro generation.
I like your commitment.
Thank you.
I admire it.
I feel good about it. I don't want to belong to a big group of people, just a little group of people.
Much better. Much better. You don't want to get lumped in.
No,
that's part of the story.
Then I'd have to like live up to expectations.
Oh, forget that. That's for nerds. That's part of the story that we are telling in this podcast, is it not?
Yes, it is. Because I'm like, wait, which part? The micro generation part? No, it is like the big lumps of people that don't actually, that you're supposedly are part of and are emblematic of who you are, and yet you look at the lists of characteristics and go, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not my experience at all, or doesn't describe me in the slightest. And that all seems super problematic when we try to like segment audiences or parts of the public for the purposes of understanding politics or anything else. And like, let's just group them into these birth years and say that they are a thing. It seems to me they're probably not a thing. They're probably many things.
Not quite as homogeneous as we wished at some point.
No. Not even
so when you and I over the summer decided, hey, we're going to make a podcast, we have a lot of questions that we both find interesting. We settled on this idea of looking at groups and looking at just exactly that thing, like getting into the what's inside the homogeneity, what's inside the research that defines it. And the first story that we thought was the most compelling and that we both really latched onto pretty quickly was the Millennial Myth. And I was interested in the current headlines of it, how wild it is that millennials are accused of killing everything in culture and the economy and the world. And we'd look at that in a future episode. But as we started pulling at it, some of the things you remembered, some of the things you knew about the very early formation of the myth, I opened the door for me to say, I think we could do a whole season focused on really going and examining and trying to figure out where did all this start before it got to where we are today, and then filling in that space in the middle.
Yeah, because I think my fixation has been, it's this kind of short-term memory situation with the way the kind of popular narrative about millennials has evolved, where at any given moment in time, the snapshot that's being presented is presented as if it was both ever thus and shall ever be so, right? Yes. That millennials are like this, full stop. And not like millennials are reacting to social, economic, political forces this way at this moment, which would be itself an improvement, though still not probably sufficient to describe tens of millions of people. But instead, it's sort of like you blink and you forget what you were saying yesterday about millennials, and today you're saying something else, and you blink again, and tomorrow you say something else. And because I've just sort of happened to be fed millennial trend reports since they were more or less invented, it sticks in my head of like, wait, last time I thought about this, you were telling me something else. And so, my tendency is always to go, wait, where did this begin? What's the origin of this sort of thing? And I can't help myself. I just immediately have to like go look it up. But it also then revealed that it turned out I'd already read the first book.
Yeah, we did a lot of research to figure out that you already had it in a storage unit that you had already read.
Yeah,
very funny,
hilarious. Yes, yeah, and so it just seemed like if we're going to understand how this kind of public narrative has been crafted and shaped and evolved over time, we have to sort of start at the beginning and keep looking at what's going on now and start to kind of pick apart, well, who are the people within this generational cohort and how much do they really have in common, and
Yeah.
you know what's driving their responses to things. And I think the thing that we have come up with over all the research we've been doing and the look backs and looking at now is that there are elements of truth in these stories, and then a whole lot of license being taken to explain those elements of truth.
There
And then a
are
lot of the things that are being
no, go finish.
go ahead. I was going to say a lot of the things that are being explained by, well, it's because they're millennials, is confusing, you know,
Yes.
which end of the stick we should be looking at here. It's the economy, or it's policy, or it's technology, or it's culture, or whatever. And the millennials aren't making it be that way. They're reacting to it being that way based on where they are in their lives.
Yeah, and it
And
seems
the
that
other experiences they have.
that idea of it's because they're millennials is a very amorphous and flexible and malleable punchline that for the time that they were the future of America and the optimistic saviors demographically of America and the world, they're millennials. They're going to fix it. They're great. Here's all the things that are great about them. And then it became, well, we're in this great recession here and oh shit. Well, they're millennials. Yep. And now they're killing toilet paper and they're killing the economy. They're killing home buying. They're killing every single part of culture and the economy. They're millennials. Yeah. And as that story shifts, what we've been able to do in the research that we've done is sort of, I mean, I'm a little cautious of our own work, that I don't want to be guilty of what I think has happened to millennials, which is one or two data points that make a narrative that works as a point in time. I'm trying to be cautious in our examination that we don't say, aha, here's the golden key, you know, here's the answer. And what's been fun about recording the episodes and the conversations we already have is both of our skepticism of jumping to that conclusion, and saying, here's the answer. Here's, we found the first book and this is where everything went wrong. And it's 100% our point of view is correct.
Yeah, no, it's so much more complicated than that. It's always like, well, maybe it's this, and maybe it's also these 5 other things, and maybe it's all 6 things happening simultaneously, and that's why. I think the other thing that's interesting in our looking at this is discovering that this is a pattern that repeats, and yes, that, some of the things that were used to characterize and define early on what millennials were the exact same things that were being used kind of later in their evolution. We started talking about millennials. I mean, in the public discourse in particular, like we really start talking about millennials as they're about to graduate, as the first ones are about to graduate from high school in 2000. And, there had been people who cared for 10 years before that, but that's really when it starts to pick up the pace, is like 98, 99, 2000. And for Gen Xers, they got characterized much later. Like they got defined and labeled well into their 20s. But some of the same characteristics that they were using to describe Gen Xers are being used to describe millennials, are now being used to describe Gen Z. And, to some degree, there's some similar characteristics that were used to describe boomers, for that matter. And what I think the other thing we were reacting to is millennials are still kind of the media shorthand for youth, even though many of them are into their 40s now. And so, or as I have told you, I refer to them, the newly old. And so,
welcome.
Yes, welcome. It's just as fine here as it was over there. Like, yeah. I don't know that much changes, really.
Just a little bit more lower back pain.
Exactly. More things exhaust you, sort of emotionally and intellectually. But like that seems weird to keep sort of when you're talking about, I mean, even over the last couple of weeks, right? The youth vote is including millennials, even though many of them are 43 years old. And it's like, what are we talking about here? Versus, I think this may be the tipping point moment where we're going to stop talking about millennials as youth and start talking about Gen Z as youth, because I already see people flogging a Gen Z saved us narrative on the Twitters about the election.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, I can't wait for the actual tabulations to come back and to find out that they did fine, but they did not outperform anybody's expectations.
Yes.
But
it's the cycle that just keeps
lazy
repeating.
narrative.
Yeah. And it's the same.
Exactly.
It was a
want to
lazy
talk
narrative
about the youth
then, and it's a lazy narrative now.
Yes. And each time, and this comes up in a lot of our conversations in the other episodes, there's this, when they're young and not yet out of college, they are the future, they are the saviors, they will be heroes, and then they graduate from college and they are pains in the ass. And they seem to want a lot of stuff, and like they ask a lot of questions or whatever, like whatever it is that they suddenly reveal themselves as not easy children, they're sort of difficult young adults, and then they become disappointments later on. And that's the kind of early narrative arc from 12 to 45. That's the story of the youth. And once they hit 45, well, we probably just stop talking about them altogether. That's usually the way it goes. But and then they reemerge when they're nearing retirement.
Yes.
Because they matter again.
Right.
So that's also part of what we wanted to dig into.
Yeah, and it's been an interesting series of conversations that we've been able to have, and series of research projects that we've been able to dig up, because when I was in it, as the narrative was being shaped and as they were a core customer that I had to figure out in earlier parts of my career, you're in the ocean. You can't see the edges of it. But now we have the benefit of time. We can look back. We found what we consider the source text. We found people that were there at the very beginning of the storytelling. And we have found people that were asking the questions, but maybe not loudly enough, or maybe didn't have the right platform for anybody to pick up what they were saying or add it to the story. And so the perspective that we have just through the benefit of time is allowing us, to really examine the formation of the myth, how it got, I guess, transcreation is the buzzword that goes along with the rise of the millennial generation from that time period. And then how it got deconstructed, and now how it's being copy pasted, replicated with Gen Z and even Gen A. You can already see they're the saviors before Gen Z is even phased into cranky middle-aged people with mortgages and jobs.
I mean, they're still like 10 years off from that.
But we could probably write the date in an envelope when those stories will start and be correct about it.
Yeah, that's probably true. We probably should do that. Put a little time capsule for Gen Z together. I mean, I think this is also why, because we've both been in this, brand marketing, advertising strategy world, our clients are always, not all of them, but many of them believe that, have beliefs about the importance of youth audiences. Let's put it that way, right? So either it's the probably misbegotten belief that, well, if you get them when they're young, then they'll be loyal customers for the rest of their lives. And I have a story to tell about finding out that my mother was not brand loyal to a particular laundry detergent. It was whatever they had at Costco.
Right.
So they will find out that does not work eventually. But in the meantime, clients and brands have ideas about youth culture as a thing, and they have ideas about the value of young customers, and so they spend a fair amount of time obsessing about them. And working in these kind of consulting or agency roles, we're often kind of looking to see what we can find about these audience demographics, and what we're being given is whatever the latest public narrative is. And if you've been doing this long enough, you start to go, hang on, this narrative took a turn.
And now if I look up anything and I start with desk research, I'm like, this is just content marketing. Like, this is all just claptrap.
Yes.
Which also rose during the formation of this myth. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, we also have talked about the sort of BuzzFeed quizzes of, you're a millennial if these things are recognizable to you. And all of those things have become now, I mean, that's what's so weird. We're living in this kind of, the veil has been lifted, and the remix culture is what it is. And so stuff that used to all be kind of behind the scenes for marketers to think and care about and like create mood boards and persona slides about audience types are now like BuzzFeed, questionnaires.
Yeah.
And stuff that people use, in the earlier, like 10 years ago, we're spending a lot of time at work taking these BuzzFeed quizzes to be validated that they were in fact millennials or not. and so like, it feels like the narrative is like turned on itself, where now it is the snake eating its own tail. It's like, we're telling millennials what they're supposed to be like. We're doing this again with Gen Z. We did it with Gen X. Like, you are like this, and we have these cultural expectations of you now because of that. And you should just live up or down to whatever those expectations are.
Yes.
And then it's like, how much do you buy what people are telling you you're like?
And are you allowed to say no?
Exactly. And like, if you say no, if you sort of deviate from the expectation, like, does anybody even see it? Like, because they know what to expect, and that's all they're ready to believe in.
Yeah. So we went into this season with a curiosity about millennials. We didn't know it was going to be a season, but it looks like, if you stay with us, we are going to look at the current headlines about millennials and have some fun. We are going to look at research that was presented early on in various places and get to know millennials from the time they were graduating high school and how that compared nationally, and see maybe some of those conclusions were a little off. We're going to look at that source text. We're going to examine the research done as part of that source text and figure out some of the questions we have about the methodology there. And we're going to look at even the fundamentals of how do you do research like this at scale? And then look at the way culture has changed over 15, 20 years, and spend some time looking at millennials as a part of culture and what the reflection is as a part of this season, which I'm hoping is season 1 of a few seasons at least. We'll see if Farrah can tolerate me for a second season, as we're halfway through this one at this point in time.
Yeah. I have a good feeling about it. I think you're highly tolerable, Adam.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, because I think like this is just one of many kind of groups that get defined for the purposes of thinking about audiences and marketing and politics and just the way we talk about culture, and they all have their problems. It's just, I think this one is truly probably the largest single cohort of a group of people that has been given a single name and a at least at any given moment in time, a single narrative. The narrative changes every 5 years or so, but it's a good place to start. And there are other groups too that I think we're curious about that. If we don't just get exhausted, we'll tackle those in subsequent efforts. But for now, like, there's so much to say about millennials, it's almost impossible to think about how to keep it to 10 or so episodes. But I think we've done it. I think we've disciplined ourselves enough to know when to stop.
We'll see.
We'll see. That's true. That would be the first time that I've ever said that about myself.
Yeah.
So
discipline is not my strong suit.
On the next episode of In the Demo, Farrah and Adam look at the current headlines to see how millennials are reflected in news and media, while examining some of the dominant perceptions of the millennial generation today. I'm your robot host, Eliza. Please be kind. In the Demo is produced by Farrah Bostic and Adam Pierno, with support from the Difference Engine. Music by Omega Man, under the Creative Commons license.